Hello, and welcome to an adventure like no other. Far more than what you have known, there is something far more to be known than you can ever know. And it is all about you, the real you, your real awareness with your intuitive senses. You were never taught that the real you, your real awareness, is operating 5 bodies in cause and effect, restricting creation. You have been taught to think that you are only a one-dimensional human person, with a mind and emotions, and with a very short lifespan on this planet Earth. More than what your mind can grasp is your intuitive senses that can be opened to see beyond all your restrictions. You have always had an opening to see beyond what you have known, and this has been purposely kept from you, and this is where you have heard rumors and stories about your nightly dreams. Your so-called dreams is your opening to your intuitive senses that will allow you, the personal you, to excel beyond what you have previously known. Everyone has intuitive senses, and very few people take advantage of what is possible by recognizing something more than their mind can understand. Creation has its place for all of us, and then there is all life, which is far more than anything than what can become with creation. Everything we experience is necessary for us to survive with whatever we choose and decide our life to be. New Kevin Smith is the great witness to something more than what can be taught and learned in any school. It can be so that when anyone first listens to Kevin's intuitive side experiences, also known as real side experiences, from what their personal mind has known, Kevin's manner of expression will at first be rather different to comprehend. This is where this introduction and reading the new books and Facebook groups will help. Have fun deciding. DUANE the Great Writer and Seer.
This real side experience would begin with me in an observing capacity. Unless there is reason for the simulated body forms to be inserted into the experiences, which there will be if we are engaging with the personal consciousness of individuals throughout multi-dimensional creation, or we seek to amend certain situations or circumstances for and on behalf of creationally operating body forms, we can't really change or assist the predicaments others are in, as they, like all are the deciders. We rather have to operate within the agreement parameters they set as to the extent by which we can assist. But if the personal self needs only be shown creational happenings, for whatever reason this might be, warnings, heads up, potentialities of agreement that may manifest physical level-wise if held to, etc., then interjection into the simulation is unnecessary. The real awareness, as part of the isness everything reality, permeates in actuality through all consciousness as it effects into the various myriad of expression, form and feature that it does. All the ideas that are the underlying base state of creation before they are converted into a simulation through the body form mechanics are then available to the real awareness. And like an endless assortment of movies, so the required movie is selected, the idea agreements effecting the particular simulated situation is presented for the personal self on the real side to be shown. As we operate ever more so with focus and intent set with is recognition, everything that transpires on the real side will be in relation to the actualizing of this real intent. Everything will make sense according to life and awareness, all the assignments, the assistance we afford others, and all that we are shown. That maybe at the moment of experience we may not fully recognize the significance, we may as yet lack the awareness to determine all the particulars and how they relate, but nevertheless we will be shown what we need to see each and every moment if we pay attention, and if understanding or recognition is lacking, then generally at a later moment will we grasp what was being shown or conveyed. In actuality, every experience, every idea is a means of is recognizing, as every idea is a segregated piece of the everything isness reality, isolated through the creational mechanics that awareness operates through to afford a recognition of the is from the comparison all ideas and the simulation effected from them provide. Until that recognition is so, we remain in creation and continue on with comparing simulation to the isness. The sun's demonstration as the best given example of the essence of the is, that it simply shines on all, and nothing created, thought, emotion, attitude, consideration, conviction, or assumption will the sun embody. As I observed, from my aside from creation, real awareness view, I would witness a planet somewhere in multi-dimensional creation, the inhabitants of which were a race that appeared human, although every individual of the species had blonde hair and was in remarkably good condition, as though optimum health was a standard. The only feature that set them apart from a human was that they all had cat-like eyes, generally of a green coloration with the slit pupil. Impressions revealed that although at that moment all were personal self-consciousness immersed and embracing, their consciousness was however of a particular design where no intent or inclination to destroy, subjugate, or harm was present. They would individually have their own personal self-attitudes, as all individuals will, and the entire race had technology to the approximate extent of humanity, give or take. There may be the potentiality that I would at some point engage with these people, in whatever capacity this might be, as all interaction is an opportunity. That even if as a species they maybe were not ready for the next step of taking on the journey of is recognition, every time we do interact with other body types, entering their created reality will be elements of our own intent-effected circumstances, and undoubtedly something of where our intent lies, the is, and the promoting of it, and the guides, will become known to them, and may be the spark, the catalyst, for their own awareness processes to begin. As oftentimes the real awareness is ready, but the personal self needs to be brought into the picture, afforded the references, etc., and as we go throughout creation, we endeavour to do as the is does, shine like the sun, that all are beneficially impacted. Although the planet and its cat-eyed humans seemed to be one where a society was in place, absent of much of the strife, struggle and hardships that is prevalent on the planet Earth, they still were contained in actuality. The controller and slave dynamic does play out across creation in various forms, but where humans are completely controlled, where the reptilians manage and impact every facet of human society, with humans subjected to all manner of controlling, health impacting and depopulation efforts. In the case of the cat-eyed human species, the dark force reptilians were content to sit back and simply observe them without interference or adverse impact into their affairs. Evidently agreements had been secured that the reptilians were effectively still controlling the species, unbeknownst to them, but the parameters of the agreements between the two, the reptilians and the cat-eyed humanoids, dictated effected simulation where, although, as I said, the humanoids were not poisoned and destroyed as with Earth humans, they were contained. For the reptilians had as though encased the planet of the humanoids within a kind of a force field or dome, as though the planet was quarantined, and the reptilians then would simply monitor from their various bases and planet-orbiting ships and stations. Perhaps they intended to impact the contained species more severely at some later point. But it was enough seemingly that the situation be maintained as it currently was, for generally the control measures applied are proportional to the extent by which the various slave species are waking up to the control they are under. Different measures for different slave species then, that which is required for humanity and the earth very different to what was necessary to maintain this species of cat-eyed humanoids as agreeable slaves. For it is agreement the reptilians must maintain, agreement of their power and control over all their slave species, that will then effect as circumstances where the reptilians control the simulator as according to the nature of the extended agreements they have from practically all body types within this creational realm. Evidently then the cat-eyed humanoids had overall as a species agreement of this power surrendering nature to the controllers, subconsciously as most slave species will have, but consciously also as many of the waking up Earth humans have not, hence the need for escalating health impacting controlling measures, depopulation, potential robotization for humanity, etc. But now, as I observed, I would see a group of what may be referred to by the species as dissidents. The species had technology comparable to Earth humans, as I said, but this particular group were leading lights in the disciplines of technology. They had come to suspect that their planet was encased in a kind of dome or force field, and having constructed a craft that would elevate them to a position in the atmosphere where it was believed they would reach the dome, they were determined to prove their theory with the expected ridicule from all of their species. Literally, these were the only individuals who considered that despite the almost utopia-like world they existed on, there was a control mechanism in place, and that could at any moment be ramped up if necessary. Their craft would take the group skyward, and their theory would be confirmed. They would be met with a barrier, a field that encompassed and contained their planet. It was as though they also had the technology ability to breach the field, which was designed to prevent this, but perhaps only according to the standard technology the humanoids had developed, for they had no need for further technology as a people, having everything they required, and so there was no necessity that technology continue to advance in sophistication. But here were a group pushing the boundaries of established technologies that included not only their dome-reaching ship, but that they also had the ability to punch through the dome to determine what lay beyond it. In theory, the humanoids would then be in the vacuum of space, but as a species, having never been beyond their own atmosphere, they had no knowledge of the space beyond, or that it even was hazardous, absent of adequate protection, they would see just the star-littered skies, but generally have little interest in regards to it. The group then would have been instantly killed, their ship affording only the amount of protection a standard Earth aircraft might, not designed then for the rigours and body form detrimental environment space presented as. But the reptilians had been monitoring their every move. They could have allowed them to be destroyed as they breached the dome and entered space, but instead chose to beam them aboard, their ship remaining behind, which would drift abandoned out into space, as though the reptilians determined that they could engage with the group of adventurers. They would, of course, never be allowed to return to the planet and share what they had discovered, and very likely the humanoid species would consider they had destroyed themselves with their foolish venture. As now the 5 humanoids were confronted by a group of reptilians, they had been beamed directly into a recreational area of one of the planet's orbiting reptilian monitoring stations, and now they received quite a shock, surrounded by body types that had the same design of eye that they did, the slit pupil, were bipedal, walking on 2 legs, but that were green-scaled, had tails, looking like walking dinosaurs, as the standard reptilian body form presents itself generally as. The reptilians in the creational area, a mixed assortment of females and males, would amuse themselves by confirming the dome as a means of containment, and very likely, as I said, the 5 adventurers would be destroyed or eaten. This would give the reptilians, however, something to ponder, for as I said, up until now they had the species agreement, by whichever means and circumstances this had been secured. There had been no need for anything then beyond the decided containment field, but in light of these new developments, that yes, only 5 soon-to-be destroyed humanoids had determined the existence of the dome, but very likely others may follow in their footsteps. Were such to occur, as more of the species began to turn over a few rocks, as the saying goes, the possibility of an eroding of the consciousness agreement the reptilians had. Agreement that assisted in and a part of the maintaining of their creational power positions. Very possibly then more controlling measures would be decided. Perhaps a similar model of control would begin to roll out as had happened with humanity. Maybe even a few depopulation events and resets and indoctrination programs, as perhaps this was the first leak in the very contained and reptilian agreement secured species consciousness. That yes, the dark forces will have agreement through all the subconsciousnesses of their slave species, or they couldn't be in positions of control over them in whatever form that might take, but ultimately it's always best to have complete agreement, including consciously, as this effects as complete control, and like I said, as the slave species begin to rattle their chains, the conscious agreement begins to become eroded and further measures of control are required. But it is through derision and adversity that individuals and species are more likely to wake up to not just the reality of their controlled situations, but potentially beyond that, the reality of themselves and multi-dimensional creation, and then the recognition of their real awareness and where creational extrication becomes possible. And as it is through agreement that props up the dark forces' hold and power over the simulator, as individuals step up and sever these agreements in order to assume positions as the true light real awareness beings they actually are. This then begins to lessen the agreement that maintains the dark forces' positions, so they will be swift to prevent this by all means necessary, as the process always begins with the various species waking up to the controlled restriction they are in. So very likely is the possibility of engaging with this cat-eyed humanoid species when it is prudent to do so, as for now I would just be shown the first signs of the beginning of the process of waking up for this species. In a scene that followed, I would witness the physical level emergence of huge structures across the earth. These would feature in every town and city of every country, be in plain sight for all human slaves, and created by the hand of the dark force controllers. This would represent another potential controlling mechanism required then to mitigate the overall shift in human consciousness, the wake-up that is occurring, and it was so that a group and myself, the only member of the group I recognized would be Jeremy, would investigate. We would enter several of these controller-built structures, all of which were of a similar design and indeed a purpose. Part of the controller's game is to keep everyone in creation for the reasons I mentioned earlier, and one of the mechanisms of doing so is through distraction. If they can keep every slave focused one-dimensionally on whatever simulated affected ideas the controllers create that retain the slaves locked into their personal selves through the emotional thrill elicited in response to that which the dark forces provide, then any idea distraction will do. If they can have the species content to remain then as slaves and chasing the idea creations of the dark forces, then the slave species will be maintained in the simulators as a source of agreement which perpetuates the dark forces' overall positions of simulator power. One of the sensation-inducing means is the technology, the gaming technology in particular, as the dark forces are consistently improving what is made available to keep humanity captivated through the immersion into the ever-growing in sophistication computer games they can indulge in. These huge structures represented this computer game-like development's latest phase, as every human globally, through virtue of the availability and indeed the inexpense, would enter these mega structures, be hooked into a virtual reality-like computer games, which boasted cutting-edge, never-before experienced graphics, and so would serve as another means to keep humanity captivated and indeed distracted from their real purpose ultimately of is recognition. A tried and tested mechanism to keep the slaves enthralled and one-dimensionally focused, along with whatever else the controllers deem necessary, the poisoning, the nullifying frequencies, HARP, the Wi-Fi, depopulation, and complete species resetting if required. This was possibly then an option in the pipeline, that which the controllers may choose to instigate at some point, may be over-exaggerated in the experience, may be not. Everything is agreement dependent, so we shall see what transpires in regards to the specifics and details of the overall human experience as it plays out. In a final scene, I would be observing another creationally powerful being, all power really is agreement that allows for an individual to be so, for regardless of how physically mighty are the created body forms, with whatever abilities have been developed, that the individual is able to then impact any other adversely is dependent always on the permission, the agreements that allow this to take place. Absent of the idea agreement, and there can be no simulation, just like in computer games, where the ability and extent by which one character can bestow harm on another or even destroy them is according to the programming that is installed in regards to the game characters and in relation to each other. The same principles apply in the creational simulators, where the created consciousness of each awareness stores the ideas, all the simulated affected potentialities of what can be experienced, the parameters set for each individual that can enter our experiences, program-like agreements permitting the abrasive actions which must be present that others can exact harm or destroy us. Absent of such, they would be unable, regardless of their desire to do so. And certain individuals are rather adept at trawling and gathering agreement to their power, to their ability to abrasively impact others on a massive simulator scale, the best examples being the reptilian life-level gods. The being I was observing had secured agreement by whatever means he had, that where he was positioned in creation represented the seat of his power, and multitudes of other beings occupying the same creational region were subject to him and his dictates. He seemed to have no direct association with the simulator reptilian controllers, more so a kind of black magician and ill-intended independent dictator, and was looked upon as a kind of god-like being due to the developed supernatural abilities he could muster. Very often we may attempt to approach such beings, as through their established agreed-to positions, were they to step up, they could be very instrumental through the influence they can wield. Interestingly, the two previous scenes I recounted, I had been typing right after I had experienced them on the real side on my laptop, but at a certain moment the screen went completely black, and through it, as though a portal into the dimensional position the powerful godlike being resided in, so I would witness him and be afforded impressions regarding him as I have shared. For indeed, the technology the dark forces have made available to the human slaves, especially the televisions, computer screens and cell phones, through the electromagnetic frequencies they operate on, serve as portals and conduits to other dimensional positions. The 5G is a frequency which aligns with the lower astral, in fact, an effected life-level position for all the body forms of an especially twisted and ill-intended persuasion, a means then by which entities, demons, among the body forms residing in the lower astral can access through to the earth physical level and carry out whatever mischief they are able through the very technologies operating on these frequencies that practically every human will be interacting with. This scene would afford further verification that my laptop served as a connection to wherever in multi-dimensional creation this powerful being lurked and exerted his tyrannical dominance, that although he was unaware of my observing him in this manner, that as conduits and portals go both ways, not inconceivable, that were he to become aware of this potential gateway access to another area of creation, he may consider taking advantage of it. For I would observe him in a kind of throne room area of one of his many grand palaces. One of his minions had displeased him, and was subject to the powerful being's wrath, convulsing in electric-like bands of energy before collapsing dead to the floor. Further impressions suggested that although the powerful being had no direct association with the dark forces, as I said, he still would extend his considerable magical capability on their behalf, as though he would on occasion assist them with certain ill-intended agendas, if it was in his personal self-interest to do so, as though selling his services in exchange for whatever he would deem as a suitable compensation. And in some way, shape, or fashion, impressions revealed it was through his extensive magical capability that all I had just shared was able to be so. He was as though the essential contributory glue which maintained the control the reptilians had over the cat-eyed people, the energy dome that encased their planet, and instrumental in some way in regards to certain technologies, mainly the computer game-orientated tech as used by the reptilians, where suppression and distraction of humanity were concerned. And so this was setting the stage for very likely a confrontation with this godlike being, perhaps extending him the opportunity of the years, or to encourage him to at least make better choices, as opposed to the destructive capacity he operated in not only his own creational position, but impacting other areas of creation also through the black magic services he was providing, or indeed, failing that, were he to adamantly and stubbornly hold to his decided position and general skullduggery, he may very well be a candidate for the phantom zone, removed and displaced that he no longer could operate in awareness-crushing and life-restricting ways. So it will be interesting to see how things develop in regards to the cat-eyed humanoids and the powerful godlike being.